Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to the second segment of Finding Me in the ITV Networks. Today with my very young and dynamic crew, of course the future of South Africa, Joel, Alfred and Jaco. For those of them who are just joining us today, you know, when I did that I almost thought of the Three Stooges.
The Musketeers.
Yeah, the Three Musketeers. Okay, yeah, a better example, yeah. Okay, so Alfred, you were talking about that. Can you perhaps just say how do we then motivate the youth?
I think conscientization, at least in the university context, is always linked to what Joel and Jaco already iterated, which is the change of curriculum. But not just the entering or the expansion of the already existing curriculum with African perspectives or with African philosophy, but a conceptualization of our education system that will allow us to be able to be transformed and to rethink certain deeply held ideas about what is power, what is democracy. Certainly a pertinent example for us as somebody from jurisprudence is perhaps in the law of succession, for instance, that in the Western liberal idea, succession is about you having the freedom to have money and then being able to leave it to anybody, including your cat, if you like to, and leaving your children or your partner impoverished, destitute, whatever the case may be. When African understanding of responsibility and obligation doesn't exist, when somebody dies, they inherit responsibility, they inherit obligation to those who are left behind. And so at least for us in law, that is precisely what it will encompass to change and conscientize people. And also to show the tensions between the Western philosophies and the African philosophy, where they meet, where they can help each other, where there are moments of solidarity between them, and when they are contested, when they can be contested, when they can be challenging, and how to mitigate those things. So yeah.
Okay, but you're speaking about transforming this whole notion of, perhaps you're transforming whole perspective on how education should be viewed, and then of course how you will impart it. But before we came onto the show, we were speaking about another concept, and that was looking at the whole notion of expertise, Joel, in the notion of higher education, because it all relates to affirmative action, to I suppose to employment equity, etc. So how would you then understand that or equate that in terms of like job employment or opportunities, etc.?
Yeah, so I mean, we were talking about this idea of an expert in contrast to an intellectual. So we have someone who's recently published an article, Costas Duzina, saying that the rise of the expert is the death of the intellectual. The first problem with any assumption of expertise presumes a certain non-ideological, neutral position. To be an expert means you know everything about everything, and that your positions are come from elsewhere, as opposed to produced also through social construction, through culture, and meditated through power and inequality. So I often in academia we would push for us to resist this notion of expertise. But given the neoliberalization of a university and its corporatization, where universities are about research outputs, it's about how many famous professors we get, you know, to our faculties every year, how much people publish, how many people get a doctorate and a master's in a specific year, really how much money the university makes. This notion of expertise or the expert is rising, and it's intensely problematic because the expert is more often than not a white man. Wedded to a specific cultural worldview that becomes universal. So in a sense, it's linked to this notion of curriculum transformation. The reason white thought, the thought of white people, Western thought, presumes itself to be neutral, to be the only way. That its fundamental concepts about the individual, about the community, about the self, about time, is neutral. And that's the assumption. And it's not.
It's not.
So there's no such thing as an expert. There's somebody who holds specific views. So there's an intellectual, there's an interlocutor, there are debates and differences over concepts. I'm not saying there's no such thing as a well-educated person who knows their discipline well. But I'm resisting the idea that there are some people who know more simply because they have a title of expert. Expert is ultimately a bureaucratic title.
Yeah, because I mean, Jaco, if I may come to you, if you consider already the extent of disadvantage that exists, people who have had privilege will obviously would have had greater access and would have had more time to study, more time to put forth perhaps different arguments, or even to extend or expand their discipline. So obviously this whole notion of the expert reinforces or extends the privilege of the white class, isn't it? Because, I mean, if you look at it in the South African sense, it's only 20 years. In 20 years, how many academics can you actually produce when the schooling system alone takes 12 years?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so in other words, using this notion, in my understanding, of the expert then prolongs the life of white academics, or giving them the opportunity to continue or to control the universities, because these are the only experts that are available. I mean, I've heard that before. We haven't got anybody else. Expertise, yes.
And it also plays such an important and dangerous role towards the siege that is on young people. At least from my own personal experiences, people don't really care what young people have to say. And that has always been part of specifically Western history, that young people should know their place. And there's a time and place for everything. And it doesn't make much sense to me, especially if we see how things are going at the moment with our elders who are in charge of everything, yet I don't see any positive change with things that are happening. To me, the question is, people don't understand the power that young people have in their own voices and what young people can do, the knowledge that we have. Here we are, the three young people, and not blowing my own horn here, but we are knowledgeable about what we believe in. Theoretically, we are well-educated young students at a university, and Joel and Alfred are running beacons of their lecturers at a university. And that is why, as myself being part of the EFF, is because the EFF to me is the voice of the youth. Majority of our membership are young. They are below the age of 25, because our population is that. Our country is at the moment sitting with 50% unemployment for black youth. And this whole thing that we are discussing just comes together, for me at least, on such cruelty that is being directed towards young people. Our voices aren't heard, and when we do raise our voice, it has resulted in the voice being totally delegitimized, being thrown aside as absolutely nothing. We are still wet behind our ears, or we need to grow up and we will see the real world. Which is all silly to me.
Yeah, well, let's just start on that particular point, and that is, for example, the pay back the money.
Yes.
In Parliament. And this was a whole lot of young people in their red overalls.
Infantilized them.
Yes.
They made them, even the way the cartoons in newspapers, despite the fact that I honestly, so far, how I see it is that what the EFF did in Parliament was received with popularity amongst most South Africans. Even conservative South Africans said, no, what they did was right, because somebody had to do it at some point. And what we always discuss is we don't understand the big hoo-ha that's being made about it, because it wasn't even that bad. It was very mild.
It happens in many parliaments all over the world.
British Parliament and certain European countries' Parliament, there they rip chairs from the canvases and throw each other with it. But to me, I think the way it's depicted still in the media is that they have been infantilized, that these naughty boys and girls in Parliament are just, throwing out their toys, and they are trying to demonize and delegitimize what is actually being said. And to me, I say, we look beyond it. That is why I like the EFF in Parliament, in the sense that they always reiterate the same line: we are here for serious business, we're here for serious politics, because they know what is coming their direction. And that's how I feel about it. The youth must get serious about politics.
Yes, they must. But Alfred, I have to ask you this question. While Jaco was giving that whole metaphor about ripping chairs from the floor, I was thinking, if an African member of Parliament did that, wouldn't they say they're barbaric?
Absolutely. I think that has, at least for me, been the concern about the EFF. I mean, healthy democratic debate does allow for people to dissent, does allow for people to object against the EFF. But often that objection harbors deep racial ideas about identity. And I think Julius Malema has been really caricatured in the classic racist idea of black male identity. I don't think that the political parties in our country, I don't see one that is progressive in terms of masculinity. So I may make a concession that there is a masculinity issue in the EFF that we need to deal with. But certainly that is not a different masculinity that, say, is different in AfriForum or that is different in the ANC. It exists across. But there's something about the way that Julius Malema is seen, uncontrollable, unintelligent, somebody, a demigod, somebody who's just looking for popularity. So, but I think there's also a connection between him speaking truth to power and attempt to delegitimize him and reduce what he's saying by reverting to an idea of the black man as uncontrollable, uncivilized, and so on. I have no doubt. I mean, the classic is the D.W. Griffin's Birth of a Nation, where white people dressed as black people, they had their face, painted their face blacks, and were drinking in Parliament and were ripping chairs. I have no doubt that people would make a straight connection between that racist imitation and if the EFF had to, do that same thing, whereby in European countries it's just dismissed.
It's normal.
It's normal. Just dismissed as it got heavy, it got hot, or people were really emotional, people were passionate.
Yes.
But for black people, it was because there's something about the intelligent and their general demeanor.
So that same humanity, that same human psychology that's applied to the white body can never be applied to the black body, isn't
Absolutely.
it? Yes.
Absolutely. It's interesting for me also. I mean, one of the nice distinctions is that I get is from John Cameron when she makes a distinction between youth and teenagers. And it's almost like white kids are teenagers and their problems are clinical. They go for gap years. They go speak to a pastor, a therapist. The interventions in their life whenever they're doing something that is objectionable is always sought. Is always appreciative of their dignity. Always responsive to the potential to change, to be really law-abiding people. But for us, we are black and we are the youth. The intervention in our problem must always be institutional, either jails. In the United States, there's all sorts of laws. Black men are dying because there's police laws that allows, like stand your ground, that allows people to merely shoot somebody because they have an anxiety about danger. That anxiety always informed by already existing racial stereotypes. And so, that distinction for me is relevant in understanding even how the EFF, as a predominantly, at least in the media, presented as a predominantly black male party, might be treated differently. Their action be viewed differently to if they were done by somebody who inhabited a different identity, i.e. white, for instance.
I just want to make one small point about, I think it relates to what both of you are saying. The first is there's something about neoliberalism or capitalism producing a certain kind of self-interest. So the first problem is that the youth really aren't interested in politics. They're interested in fashion, in sex,
alcohol,
partying. They're interested in which job will get them the most money as quick as possible. And that's really what neoliberal capitalism does. It makes you turn inward. You become so self-interested that you can't think of a future in a world and a politics. But it also produces low standards for what is democracy. So in one way, one can actually look at what the EFF did as probably one of the most democratizing moments in Parliament, because they were making a claim for accountability, political accountability, not this kind of standing up rituals of giving speeches. They were the first to problematize this idea of honorable members when people are quite clearly insulting each other and clearly don't regard each other as honorable and aren't conducting themselves in an honorable way. So definitely the idea that the EFF's arrival in Parliament denigrated the name of Parliament is a weird, it's a bizarre claim. It's not true, even comparatively not true. But even then, the EFF might have done for Parliament one thing that's never happened, which is to bring actual democracy. Actual demand.
And the demands of the people, working class people. That's what I liked about it. It disturbed this bourgeois notion of Parliament, this ruling classes of Parliament. The fact that they refused to wear Western white people suits is, to me, already a starting point of showing how they are resisting, and that to me is where it is, small little acts of resistance.
Okay, so we've come to the end of this particular interview. We're going to go on to part 2, but I think I'd like to stop there and say thank you, because we're on this particular momentum of let's now raise the resistance. So we'll see you next week for part 2. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.